Warning. Uncharted planet detected. Scanning. Scanning. Warning. Life form detected. Life form identified. Ken Burnside and Mike Llaneza of Ad Astra Games. Incoming transmission.
Greetings, travelers, and welcome to Traveller RPG Headquarters. You can find our Facebook group by searching our name in the Facebook search tool, or find a link in the video description below. Thank you for participating in our third annual Mayday Traveller Day event. It's a day we celebrate Traveller and all its additions and offshoots for all the fun times it's given us around the gaming table with friends and family. I'm your host, Frank Succardi, also known as CyborgPrime, and today I'm happy to introduce Ken Burnside and Mike Llaneza of Ad Astra Games. Welcome, guys.
Good to be here.
Happy to be on the program.
This is our first group interview, so we'll just take turns. Let's start with Ken. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? How old are you? Where do you come from? Where'd you grow up? Stuff like that.
Sure. I'm 51, and I was born on Christmas Eve, and I was born on Christmas Eve in North Pole, Alaska. I have been doing tabletop gaming pretty much since playing Raid on Iran by Steve Jackson Games, which I played before I ever played D&D. My first publication credit was when I was 16, when, as a school project, I published an RPG. That RPG is called Renegades. It has a cover printed on blue cardstock, or sort of cardstock, and I will pay you $20 if you can find a copy of that. I will pay you $40 if you'll have video of you shoving that copy into a paper shredder and lighting the shreds on fire.
Oh, I guess you're not happy about that game.
Well, I got better about it, but there are things about that game that were questionable design decisions that now make fun and amusing anecdotes.
You cut yourself some slack as your first thing, right? And
Yes.
what about you, Mike? Where are you from? How old are you? Stuff like that. Tell us about yourself.
I'm 52. I was born on Christmas Day.
What?
Just a nod worse than how Ken got it, in Boston, Massachusetts, and we bounced to California after experiencing a lovely winter hurricane from 3 blocks off the coast of the Atlantic. Do that once, but I wouldn't recommend doing that more than once. I landed up in Northern California on the Russian River. Wound up at an alternative grade school program, no curriculum, just teachers to support whatever you wanted to do. So for 4th and 5th grade, I read books, and it turned out there was a tabletop gaming community there. Had a little birthday money, and I had picked up a copy of Pocketbook Starfire, and I was pushing counters around on hexes when somebody came up and said, "You play these games too?" And that was in 1979, and I haven't stopped.
Fantastic. And what about you, Ken? How did you end up in California? How did you guys end up meeting?
I was out in California doing promotion for the game that eventually became Attack Vector. Had a job interview that was taking me to the Bay Area. I knew Mike through a couple of mailing lists, and we both knew a fellow by the name of Josh Qualtieri, who's an animator at Pixar. And Josh let me crash in his spare room, and then went off to do things with Pixar. And Mike was basically my taxi service for going around San Francisco for my job interviews and these sort of other things. And then we went and played some games at the local game store, and it's kind of how we met.
Cool.
And right now I live in New York, and he lives in California.
Oh, aha! I thought you guys were both in California for some reason. That's why you were giving me both time zones.
It is.
Well, that explains it. All right, cool. So Ken, do you have a favorite sci-fi book, TV show, or movie that inspires you towards sci-fi? Or
So one of my favorite SF books is The Final Reflection and How Much for Just the Planet by John M. Ford. They are both Star Trek tie-in novels, and I got to meet John M. Ford, Mike Ford, a couple of years after reading them, and he and I were good friends until he passed away. The thing that I love about The Final Reflection is that it is a C.J. Cherryh-esque alien culture novel told from the perspective of somebody in that alien culture, and it just so happens the alien culture is the pre-movie Klingon Empire, the pre-movies, pre-Next Generation Klingon Empire. And John Ford did an amazing job with him. He's called Mike by his friends, so if I refer to him as Mike Ford, that's why.
I see.
I have been watching science fiction on TV since reruns of the original Star Trek. I was a massive fan of Babylon 5 when it was out. I'm a little less of a fan of it now because we've progressed since then. Right now, I have a lot of serious, good, warm, fuzzy feelings to the nice people who make The Expanse.
Who's your favorite Babylon 5 character?
My favorite Babylon 5 character is probably Mr. Garibaldi, followed by Commander Sinclair. I found that when they dropped out from Sinclair to Sheridan, Sheridan seems to have one solution to nearly every problem, and it is detonate a nuclear weapon in close proximity.
You have to admit, that usually does work.
Yeah, but the episode where they had him do it to clear a clog in the toilet.
And what about you, Mike? Do you have a favorite sci-fi book or TV show or something that inspires you in the sci-fi realm?
I came into it, well, let's just say that in 1977 at a drive-in in Massachusetts, my life changed forever. It was an absolute change in direction, a before and after, when I saw Star Wars for the first time. And that was well leavened with reruns of Star Trek. Between the two, the different views on the future, how we can fit into it, and what we can make of it, has driven me ever since. I think I'm still probably a little more of a Babylon 5 fan than Ken is at this point. Clips from either of the last two episodes will leave me a little weepy. It's just a reflex at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I bounced off.
Come on, that's just because on those last two episodes, they managed to embed onion cutting ninjas in every single video codec.
and the most amazing technology of that whole production. I bounced off The Expanse after 4 episodes. There's no characters there I really like.
Can't connect with it.
Can't connect with it. It's watching a bunch of people I don't like do
stuff you don't care about.
Stuff I don't care about. It is setting I'm really keenly interested in. So,
gotcha.
So
hold on a second, Ken. I want Mike. Who's your favorite Babylon 5 character?
I'm gonna go to Len.
Okay.
For absolute favorite. Got a real soft spot for Mr. Garibaldi, though, and
rip to them both. Haven't they both passed on as actors?
Yes. Yeah, Mira Furlan most recently, and I think in second place I'll put Claudia Christian as Commander Ivanova, because she was given a really well-rounded character and brought it to life with a lot of real personality and no small amount of shouting.
All right, cool. Sorry, before I interrupted you, Ken, were you?
Yeah. So, Mike, with regards to The Expanse, if you quit after the end of episode 4 of season 1, you literally quit right at the point where they actually started adjusting the scripts based off of the feedback from what they were getting, what they were getting on air. Most television series, the first 2 to 4 episodes, they're shooting everything blind and they don't have any feedback on what's actually working or not.
That's why there's a 4-episode rule. Although I've been told by several people that episode 4 is where it gets really good. So.
It's really about episode 4, episode 5. And it gets steadily better to the end of season 1. Then it gets a big jump in quality from season 1 to season 2. And then it gets another jump in quality from season 2 to season 3, and it stays at that high level of quality going on out.
I still got to call you a voice in the wilderness on that.
That's what happened to me with Game of Thrones. I was like, I couldn't follow it. I was like, who is that? Who is that? Who is that? My wife could follow it. That's the cousin. That's the uncle. That's the sister. It's like, ah. And then the time
And,
the
and look who had the last laugh.
but by the fourth episode or so, I was hooked. Yeah, once I figured out who everybody was and what was going on, I was like, hey, this is actually pretty good. I'm at my second try of The Expanse myself, so we'll see how that goes.
When you the key to getting The Expanse and finding the character that you like is paying attention to Amos and paying attention to his relationship with Naomi Nagata. Once you start seeing just how Amos works and that he is a very broken person who is doing the best he can, everything else starts to make sense. If you don't understand that Amos is a very broken person with a very interesting background, who basically does not have a conscience and relies on other people to be his conscience.
But if I was really hip to broken people doing the best they can, I'd have more friends.
All right. So, do either of you guys have any hobbies aside from gaming? Ken, start with you.
So I still do running. I still do some fencing, as in whacking people with swords. But the thing about turning gaming from your hobby into your day job is that you suddenly don't have a hobby anymore. You have a day job. And one of the reasons why I personally don't try to develop RPG materials is because I play RPGs for fun, and I do not want them to become another part of my day job.
Gotcha. And what about you, Mike?
Well, I've dabbled in miniatures painting and collecting for quite some time.
And what kind of miniatures? 40K or something else?
40K, historical warships. COVID made it pretty clear that I needed a stack of models and an airbrush. That's working out pretty well.
All right.
I do a little martial arts, and at this point, I'm cultivating going outside as a hobby.
Oh, all right. I think we're all looking for a little bit of that in our hobby. So
I don't know. I discovered with COVID that being the recluse who could turn on the switch to be an extrovert for 2 to 4 hours at a time. And going out of the house once or twice a week to ship packages and run playtests translated really well to being an introvert who didn't have to turn on the extroversion bit, and went out of the house once every 2 to 3 weeks to go grocery shopping.
Yep, I retreated to my hermitage where I normally am, and people are like, "Oh, I can't wait to get back to do this and that." And I was like, "Well, I didn't even notice it because I was social distancing before it was cool." Yeah, I haven't. I have some friends that are like, "Oh, we can get the vaccination right away and skip the line," because my wife gets the excess ones where she works, and they need people to come and take those. And I was like, "No, let somebody else go ahead of me, and I'm fine. I don't have any exposure. I stay in my house." Anyway, it's no big deal. Although I do, I do miss my friends and my family.
Yep. I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity to establish that I can work, if anything, more effectively from home.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I took advantage to do production myself. So I'm asking folks to stat themselves in the spirit of Traveller. So in Traveller, you get 3 background skills. The average person gets 3 background skills that they bring with them from childhood into adulthood. It's usually things like animals or maybe electronic, like their hobby or like some aspect of daily life. Ken, what are your 3 background skills that you would consider?
Let's see. I would say that my 3 background skills, the ones that come back from when I was in high school: cross country skiing.
All right.
Arctic and wilderness survival.
All right.
Because I grew up in Alaska. And really basic firearms proficiency. I grew up way out in the sticks in Alaska.
And what about you, Mike?
I'd say computers, small unit tactics, and jack of all trades.
All right. Go on.
The aforementioned KP Alternative program led us to develop a curriculum of a couple of games of Risk a day, other strategy games, and Capture the Flag or Dodgeball at recess.
Nice.
So, KP Military Academy.
All right. I mean, right on. Awesome. Okay. So, did either of you guys go to university?
I went to University of Alaska Fairbanks and graduated with two degrees in 2.5 years because I came in with a bunch of college credits and because I had some stunts that I got to pull.
What was your majors?
My degrees are in English and are in English composition and in medieval history.
Awesome. And Mike, did you ever go to university?
I did. I've got course credits in mechanical engineering and some computer science and industrial design.
Oh, cool.
At some point, San Francisco State University and I decided it would be better if we made an amicable split and went our separate ways.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Since at that point I had a job offer at work to transfer into IT as a systems administrator, I never looked back.
True to the Traveller character development in Mongoose, you had a life event that interrupted your school.
Pretty much, but and I'm also a very lucky college dropout because I dropped out for a full-time job in my field.
Right, gotcha. If sometimes in Traveller you apply for university and you don't make it, and so a lot of people join the military or military academy. If your homeworld had a war going on and you got drafted, what service would you probably be put in and why, Ken?
Assuming that they didn't mind me being having vision in only one eye, probably they'd put me into space services because, well, there aren't that many people who think more about space combat on this planet than I do at the moment. There's probably fewer than 100 of them.
There you go. All right. And Mike, what military service would you hope to be drafted into?
Yeah. And for Ken, they'd probably just replace the non-functioning one. Now, for myself, likewise, Space Navy. I'd actually had almost made it into Annapolis out of high school, so that would fit with that. And I was here or two behind Ken in thinking about vectors and orbital mechanics with weapons involved, but that's still a pretty high percentage compared to the general population.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so then in Traveller we have our personal stats: strength, dex, endurance, intelligence, education, and social standing, on a rank of a 2 to 15. Where do you place yourself in those stat yourself, Ken?
Probably about dead average. I don't remember what dead average is.
7 across the board.
7 would be dead average across the board. I would say I am 7 strength, 8 dexterity, probably 8 or 9 endurance, probably 8 or 9 intelligence, probably a 7 or 8 education. And social status and standing, no idea, because I live in an ostensible democracy and am obviously not a member of the aristocracy. So probably a 4 there.
You're not going to be more generous to your education score with your 2 degrees?
They were They were degrees that I got because I had some tricks, like going into school with a lot of college credits out of high school, having an eidetic memory until I was 19, and being really good at time management and juggling it so that research I did for one set of papers could be reused for another set of papers.
Nice. Streamlined, optimized.
Yeah, and doing stunts like taking 18 to 21 credits per semester until my last semester when I decided to cut back to like 12 and like, what do I do with all this free time?
Sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me what you guys have been up to the past year under the COVID situation. Has it affected your gaming at all or your work? Tell me how, Ken.
Actually, I'm going to let Mike take that one first, and I'll go second.
All right, go ahead. How about go ahead, Mike?
It's interrupted gaming in that I've been looking into starting up maybe some board gaming around the apartment complex, and there's a game store that looks like it has good open gaming. Then COVID came. I managed to continue with some online gaming with Squadron Strike. Not as much as I'd like, and not nearly as much as Ken would prefer, I'm sure. So, on the other hand, I'm a lazy person when it comes to social interactions, so that may not have affected things at all.
Gotcha. And okay, so what about you, Ken?
So, funny story. When COVID really hit the U.S., I was already en route to two gaming conventions. One of them was SaltCon in Salt Lake City, where I was doing a lot of Squadron Strike demos and meeting up with the people that I was going to be car sharing down to the Gamma Expo in Reno, Nevada. And so I basically did two conventions back to back as it went from murmurs about a possible pandemic to actually being a pandemic. And figured, oh God, I'm absolutely going to get this because I'm at two conventions that have over 1,000 people on them, with about a day of car travel in between them. Got home on the 13th of March and apparently managed to miss getting the bug on the first wave that was out there. Since then, I have done a couple of things. One of them is that most of my gaming moved back to being online. We put a lot more work into the virtual map, which you got to see a couple of weeks ago. And I, at one point, had about 6 to 7 different Squadron Strike events going every week. Not that I was always participating, but I was the one doing the admin stuff and scheduling and sending the emails out. And that kind of took a header as the summer got nice, and then it's slowly been building back up again, and then it took a header again right around the holidays, and now we've got a huge influx of people who are learning attack vector on ASCII.net. In terms of business sides of it, I still go to my local gaming store to buy the RPG books for the RPG games that I play in, but I do contactless delivery. I have done conventions online, roughly one a month since the end of that. Business-wise, one of the things that COVID did for me is that it basically bumped my sales figures each month by about 50 to 75%. Mostly this is because, well, now people can't go to the movie theater, and now they can't do all of the other things. So what's a good way to spend money and get lots of hours of entertainment out of it? And tabletop gaming is one of the better choices for that.
Matthew Sprange of Mongoose told me that they sold out of their backstock of their core books and had to scramble to print up enough to meet demand. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and one of the other things that happened is that with COVID managed to throw a monkey wrench into international shipping, much the same way that the Ever Given has to going through the Suez Canal. And we ended up with a situation where almost all of the games that are sold in the U.S. are printed in China. And there was a 4 to 6 month span where you had no idea when your shipment from China was going to actually hit the docks. And it turns out that the fact that I print everything internally here meant that I had an advantage for selling to game stores because I actually had new stock that I could ship to them.
Oh, right. Yeah. As much as you could output.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what got you guys into gaming? We'll start with Mike. We'll switch it off. I'll go Mike for a little while, and then we'll switch back. I mean, as far as like who goes first. So,
Sure.
so Mike, tell us how long have you been gaming? Like before you started playing role-playing games and tactical games. What did you play games before that, like Family Game Night or anything like that? Or?
Yeah, family games around. I think I may have encountered Risk before I got to the Heavy Military Academy. Don't recall at this great remove, but yeah, Parcheesi. I good enough at chess, knew enough chess to be bad, but play the whole game without knocking the board over in frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of card games, and I somehow picked up a model building hobby before genre gaming, and then the mall, the nearest big city to the tiny redwood encrusted town we were living in, and I was looking at the models and kept going down the roll, and all of a sudden it's boxes with games in them, and what's this? You can actually do stuff with this stuff. And I had enough for copy of Task Force Games number 1, Starfire, and really the rest is history. That
tell us a little bit about Starfire for folks who aren't familiar.
Starfire was the little brother to Starfleet Battles, which Task Force put out at about the same time, and this one was more suitable for a whole fleet, and it had a ship design system and its own universe, not riffing off of Star Trek and adding their own stuff to it. This was a wholly original creation. I mean, it's not that great of a background when you look at it objectively, but I think it was one of the
when
first.
You run into it at the age of 8, it's great.
Yeah, pretty much. I think 9 technically, but yeah. And it played faster than Starfleet Battles. And we built fleets and bashed against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that left out into Ogre was my second game and my first against another person.
Great Ogre and GV.
Starfleet Battles followed soon after. I am absolutely privileged, I feel, to be supporting a Winchell Chung's a Patreon,
mm-hmm.
both for the resource that the atomic rocket stuff is, and for the massive vitamin shot to my imagination that his early C. Jackson Games artwork was.
Mm-hmm.
Warp War at least as much as Ogre.
Mm-hmm. So my first real conflict sim was Raid on Iran, which my uncle bought bought on his way on up, and just basically left it for my brother and I to learn. My brother had no interest in it. My father had vague interest in it, and I played it solo a bunch of times and figured out how it worked. And then I played it against my dad, and then I smoked my dad, and then my dad wasn't willing to play it with me anymore. After that, my grandmother bought me a copy of the Dungeons and Dragons basic Dungeons and Dragons or basic set, or the original box set, and myself and 3 of the neighbor kids got together to play games, to play Dungeons and Dragons.
What got you into RPGs? What made you make the transition from war games over to RPGs?
For me, it was my grandmother getting me a copy of D&D Basic Set, and having myself and 3 of the neighbor kids being willing to play it. None of them were terribly interested in this moving little chits around a hex map thing, even if it was about a raid on Iran. But rolling up characters and putting them through the meat grinder and watching them get killed, that was great.
Thanks, Grandma. And what about you, Mike? How did you first get into RPGs?
D&D original white box was floating around the school, and so were, I'm sorry to say, photocopies of the original Traveller books.
Uh-huh.
Like a couple of kids had status because their mother was a secretary in and had access to a photocopier that did double-sided.
Mhm.
So she could pop staples on a little black book and make a couple of extra. Although most of my babysitting money went straight into Traveller.
That's awesome.
And then also some wargaming crossover from Melee and Wizard leading into the fantasy trip as that developed. I'm pleased to a classic game I'm pleased to see have a resurgence as an OSR rules light entry. And there was some really, really neat stuff in there. Oddly enough, I always hated Dungeons and Dragons. I learned Dungeons and Dragons probably the same week I learned Second Edition RuneQuest. And
Well,
I'm looking
that makes everything clear.
Yeah. Does that explain a lot about my RPG philosophy? I think it does. I think it does.
RuneQuest is pretty popular.
Pretty popular, but it's also you develop the character in the path you want them to organically, learning as you go along, and as opportunities to learn powerful new techniques comes up. Versus, we've stolen enough gold. I gain a level. I can cast a new spell now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's. I mean, if I come to it a couple of years before, I may have fonder things about D&D and its derivatives, but no.
So
That's
you probably don't have a favorite class. Favorite character class for D&D?
I'm gonna say Ranger, but that's because the next time I play Dungeon World, that's probably what I'm going for, unless other playbook steals it on me.
Gotcha. And
Dungeon World is a really interesting design space. It's trying to be D&D like it was when you were 12 with a modern rules system, but I think it hits that very nicely.
It does.
It does.
It's a pity about Adam Koipel, though.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be
tell
like
me
that.
about that after the interview.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about it after the interview. So
yeah.
So Ken, what
Moving
was
right along?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Ken, what was your what was the thing that
What's my
my
horrifying anecdote about the end of the D&D campaign?
Yeah, let's hear that.
So one of the guys that was GMing that was in my D&D group is the kind of GM that we refer to as the frustrated fantasy novelist. He wanted to show off his world. Yes. He wanted to show off his world. He wanted to show off his plot. He wanted to show off his political intrigues. And his parents had turned their basement into an apartment for his older sister who had gotten married. So there was now an apartment that we could play in with a kitchen that was a parent-free space. So in return for being able to use that apartment, we had to accommodate his younger brother. So our GM made a character for his younger brother who is a chaotic neutral gnome illusionist rogue.
You can already tell this is going to go south.
A tale as old as time.
Oh, this one's even better. So our GM had imprinted on the Sword of Shannara and its myriad sequels.
Aww.
And so he had us going after a series of artifacts called the Wish Stones that predated the gods and could rewrite reality and, all of this power gaming bourgeois. And he had his tropes. So our chaotic neutral gnome rogue illusionist had managed to acquire one of the Wish Stones without the rest of the party knowing about it. The GM knew about it, of course. The GM put us in a situation where the chaotic neutral gnome rogue illusionist named Rumpelkaiser got to watch the entire party get wiped. Because the GM was expecting his younger brother to follow the trope of sacrifice the artifact to bring back your friends and make the plot go forward. And so we're sitting here being kind of bummed about our characters getting flattened in a fight we had no chance in and didn't even have a warning that we should have run away from it. And the GM is looking at his little brother, waiting. And waiting. It gets better. finally, finally he drops a hint, says, "So, what do you have in your pocket, Rumpelkaiser?" And his brother just sort of sighs and says, "Yes, I have one of the I have one of the wish stones." "Fine. Well, you can use the wish stone." "Oh, yeah, I can. So these can do anything, right?" "Why, yes, you could use them to raise everybody from the anything, and they predate the gods. So anything they do, the gods can't undo, right?" "Right." "Cool. I activate the witch stone, and I wish that Orcus had taste buds in his asshole."
What?
And that is how our D&D campaign ended.
Yes, it is. Oh.
Mhm.
The only thing worse than having a GMPC with the power to reshape reality is letting your younger brother play it.
Mhm.
This is a lesson I've learned today.
Billy, you're banished. You're banished from the basement forever.
And the best part about this is that in the next campaign, all of the Orcus cultists, which was GM'd by a different person, all of the cultists of Orcus had dietary restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
And Orcus was constantly pestered by a gnome trickster god named Rumpelkaiser.
Yep.
Well,
Because
at least something
the rest of
positive
us,
came out of that.
all the rest of us loved what his little brother had done.
That's hilarious. So Mike,
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah, chaotic neutral. That right there is your basic argument against the 9x9 alignment grid.
Yeah. So
You were saying?
I was going to say, what as far as RPGs go, and in general, what drew you to the hobby and hooked you and made you stay? Like, when did you know you were hooked?
Well, everybody was doing it, so I got into it, and it was really cool, so I stuck.
If people were jumping off a really cool bridge, would you do it too? Just kidding.
I don't know. Do they have squirrels or something? Role playing games with the imagination equivalent of jumping off a bridge with a squirrel suit, and get a scope for creativity, scope for being a different person, which at various times in everybody's life can be more or less attractive. Getting out of being getting out of the head of one of the poorer kids in town and being somebody with agency who could have adventures and accomplish stuff and get rich. That was really attractive.
Mm-hmm.
Trying out just being somebody else in general is interesting to me. It turns out, and yeah, it's RPGs really quickly earned a permanent place behind next to historical war games and blowing up spaceships.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Ken? When did you know you were hooked, and what is it that you love about RPGs that kind of kept you, in the gaming world?
So the thing that got me hooked on RPGs and stayed hooked was, one, all of the D&D campaigns that we'd played in. We quickly realized that our usual GM was not a very good GM. So I picked up an RPG called Champions, and given a choice between playing a minor speaking part in somebody else's novel or doing doing superhero fantasies, we did superhero fantasies.
Champions is a great game.
Yep. And the thing about Champions is that it allowed so much more control than what we got from rolling up our stats randomly and figuring out what classes we were going to play.
Right.
What the other thing that RPGs did for me was that right about the time that the D&D group was imploding was about the time that my incredibly conservative and terrifyingly Christian small town got a hold of Satanic Panic. So suddenly, the fact that I was running superhero games, well, superhero books are for kids. We will ignore the fact that this was the year that Dark Knight Returns came out.
Right, Watchmen.
But they all thought, oh, they're just playing superheroes. That one's fine. It's not that horrible, awful, demonic D&D game.
Right.
Which really was a social concern in the town that I grew up in. So that was sort of what kept me. That's sort of what made me realize I could do anything in an RPG, not just orcs, elves, dwarves, and whatever. And Champions is a really cool game engine, and I borrowed a lot of things from Champions through other later gaming experiences that I had. Then I went off to college at the local university, and believe it or not, still had time to game, mostly because as the guy with the eidetic memory, I was the one everybody asked all the rules questions of.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped a lot.
And did you...
And I've dropped...
Go on.
Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to step on you. Go ahead.
And I've dropped in and out of playing role-playing games, off and on. Basically, I will play role-playing games up until they get stale, and then I will do other things for a while, and I will come back to role-playing games to try new and different things.
Mm-hmm. So, do you prefer to be a GM or a player, Mike?
I like GMing. I'm okay at it. Come to think of it, I've mostly just run Traveller. Once badly in grade school, and once reasonably successful with a Power by the Apocalypse hack a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I played plenty fantasy, champion, science fiction, modern stuff with lots of tactical.
And
so
go on.
no real preference.
Okay.
There are games I own that I'd really like to run, and games I own that I'd really like to play, and know that I will fail miserably as a GM. I can't GM Paranoia to save my life.
Yep, that one's a tough one. So Ken, what about you, GM or player primarily?
I enjoy playing a lot. I end up GMing a lot because I'm usually people's default go-to for GMing.
Right.
Because I am articulate. I can improvise funny voices off the top of my head. I can read a prepared adventure and be ready to go fairly quickly. The problem with it is that if I end up GMing a lot, I end up doing the world building for the GMing, and then it becomes a job, and then it stops being the fun thing. It becomes this is drawing on the same creative wellspring that I use for making my living.
Right.
Let's go back to playing for a while.
Gotcha. So, how did you guys come into contact with Traveller the first time? What's your, how did you find out about it, and what drew you to it, Mike?
It was one of the games that one of the older kids had, and somehow it really clicked. The clean presentation, skill-based system, not the level-based, as I may have mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And it had deck plans. It had deck plans for starships. You could not just imagine yourself being there. You could visualize walking around. You could see the whole thing. And Traveller Supplement 7, Trainers and Gunboats. That was the lock on Traveller for me. There was never any hope I'd ever give it up after that.
Really, Traveller's this cool deck plan creation system that throws in a little RPG engine as a free Benny.
And it does so much stuff. I'm not partial to the merchants and mortgages style of play, or the murder hobos with plasma guns, but
Murder hobos in space.
Yeah.
UPS driver in space.
Worse, Uber driver in space. That's a gig economy. But a little A-Team crossed with Indiana Jones in space. That's my jam. That is absolutely my jam.
Awesome.
And I've got a mostly complete PBTA hack of Traveller in that genre to prove it.
Awesome. And what about you, Ken? What drew you to Traveller, and kind of are your favorite aspects about it? How'd you find out about it?
So I had heard of Traveller, and had somebody try to convince me to play it instead of Champions when I was in high school. And I was going, I already have an RPG. It is Champions, and I can use Hero Assistant for anything. And that Third Imperium sounds like a really hooky knockoff of Star Wars. If I'm going to play Star Wars, there's a Star Wars RPG from West End Games that I can play. Mm-hmm. So I kind of did it and bounced. After graduating from college and moving to Arizona, I had a friend who set up a Traveller campaign, and we did the Merchants and Mortgages kind of version of it. And we had a ship that was a Beowulf class ship, and I was the one who ended up naming it. I named our Beowulf class ship the Grendel's Lunch. And the GM, who eventually went on to becoming a Hollywood scriptwriter, ran a campaign where we had to basically smuggle the child of a noble off of the planet to another planet where she could get genetic treatment for her cystic fibrosis and come back, all under a deadline of, well, she's off at a summer retreat. That's why you can't. That's why you're not seeing her, the little princess, wandering around in all the social functions. And of course, hijinks ensued. Mm-hmm. We eventually got her to the place where she was getting her treatment. Had a side adventure while she was getting her treatment. Picked her up and got her back to the planet of her origins days before the deadline, where she had to show up in the cotillion. And that was pretty much the entire Traveller campaign. Take sick kid to planet, get sick kid into treatment, do side quest, get sick kid back to home, with periodic complications showing up as organized by the GM.
And well, son, is that do you have a? Would you consider that your all-time favorite Traveller story?
That is the only Traveller campaign that I have played that I have been in as an RPG player. All of my other Traveller experience has been war games.
Right, gotcha. And what about you, Mike? Do you have a memorable Traveller moment?
I've run across the bright face twice. Once Little Black Book, once in my hack, and there was an abortive Mega Traveller game starting up in college, and the guy who volunteered to run it ran into the errata sheets from the first edition of that.
Shattered Ships of the Fighting Imperium.
We didn't even get that far. First two books with actual rules to play the actual game. Bounced hard. That was unfortunately you ran into those before you ran into the DGP supplements, which were some of the finest RPG materials ever produced. But the second Across the Bright Face game had some absolutely memorable moments, and a couple of times I was opening my mouth to say, "Okay, hand me your character sheet." I mean, crazy things. And the thing starts off with you're in vac suits, a sniper's taking out your boss, and there's some asshole on the radio saying he wants your briefcase. That's PCs being PCs. They counterattack. They neutralize the sniper, and then they figure out where the asshole on the radio who's obviously behind all of this mess is, and they have the bright idea of cutting a circle in the ceiling and dropping down into the security center and hopefully attacking with surprise. This is, of course, in any strictly realistic game, a bad idea. I'm running a Powered by the Apocalypse game with a move based on your cool stat where you get to, pull up. It's called Grand Entrance. Okay. And he was planning one. And I'm going, okay, roll your dice. Natural 12. Okay. The dice have spoken. You pulled it off. Congratulations.
That's a great moment.
It's sort of thing that should never work, but it happened. I was very happy, very happy to see it, and admittedly, I was about to pull off most of a TPK an hour into the first game.
How do you feel about Hollywood moments, Ken?
I like Hollywood moments. I prefer RPG systems that give players the agency to create Hollywood moments.
Do you guys? Oh, go on. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah. To quote Firefly, which I do not do very often, big damn heroes.
There you go. Do you have a? Go on.
Yeah, my philosophy is you really should set it up so that everybody has at least a chance at an "I've got this" moment every session.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I design the playbooks for my Traveller hack. It's how I try and run the few times I do. Is there's spotlights around, you can jump into one.
Mm-hmm.
If you give me a hint, one might swing around and land on you. But everybody gets a chance to say, "I got this."
Right.
No matter
they got my time to shine
how
during
best
the game.
situation is.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Go ahead, Ben.
Go over to Ken.
So back in the days when I would still, go to physical conventions and would drop into the open gaming area and run a quick RPG session without it being on the schedule, my go-to game system was Dungeon World. Because of what Adam Koibel did, that is no longer my go-to game for that, and so I'll be looking for a different engine to run this hack in. But I would run a Dungeon World game. I would run a Dungeon World game that would start off that I would basically hand up the pre-built character stuff, put them on the middle of the table, say, "Okay, everybody, reach in, grab 2 of them, look at them, pick one. If you don't like the ones you grabbed, trade with somebody else. You have 10 minutes to look through all of these and decide what you're going to be doing." The two characters that have the red dots on them must be played to make the plot happen. Everybody else is optional. There are 12 characters. There are like 9 different character options or 12 different character options you could choose from. Actually, there are 9 exactly. You'll figure out why in just a moment. Once everybody's set it up, I explain the rules in about 15 minutes. And then I turn to the person who takes one of the 2 characters that is mandatory and say, "So, Malcolmius of Pylos, captain of the trading galley Serenity, what has your crew done to so offend the gods Boreas and Poseidon that they are trying to rip the Serenity plank from plank as you're smuggling supplies to Agamemnon's army on the fields of Ilium? You can't take the wine dark sea from me."
Oh, that's a good hack. Oh, that's a good hack. If you are getting deep, soul-felt smiles from all around the table when that drachma drops, you are the wrong convention. Or rather, you're the right convention. Everybody else is wrong.
And
do either of you guys have a go-to traveler career that you like to play?
I usually end up playing an academic.
A scholar of some sort?
Yeah, scholar or an academic of some sort. Usually with a background skill to be only marginally incompetent with a gun, or better yet, a scholar who is Jack of Trades and uses Jack of Trades for his gun skill.
And what about you, Mike? Do you have a traveler career that you like?
No real preference from me. I think I found myself when I was building playbooks, layering on a couple extra layers of color on the Marine playbook.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact that a Space Marine who's one of the default starting skills is Cutlass has a certain je ne sais quoi.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And for some of the moves I've given that playbook, that's a playbook I would be interested in running. Although I put stuff into all of them that I would like to use.
All right. So you guys are wandering around your local gaming store, and you come across a table full of new Traveller players, and you see them looking at the rules and trying to figure this whole thing out. What advice would you give a brand new Traveller player, Mike?
pick a book or TV series that the other people have that you love and the other players aren't super familiar with, and steal from it extensively.
All right, good advice. And Ken, what's your advice to a new Traveller player?
My advice to a new Traveller player is guns are dangerous. By the way, guns really are dangerous. And you should spend as many of your playtime resources as possible on making sure that, one, you stay out of gunfights, two, that you use the threat of gunfights to get what you want, and three, if a gunfight actually happens, something has gone horribly, horribly wrong, and hope you have a good medic.
All right, that's good advice. All right, now the referee looks puzzled. What's your advice to the referee, Ken?
My advice to the referee is remember that space combat should always be interior shots of the spaceship, not exterior shots of the spaceship. If you want exterior shots of the spaceship, I can hook you up, but that is not something you do in an RPG.
Gotcha. And what's your advice for the referee, Mike?
If the GM is stuck on what happens next, I go with the classic noir fiction advice. The Raymond Chandler style man with a guns burst into the room. Mm-hmm. What do you do?
All right.
And the other piece of GMing advice that I would give is always end whatever you're doing to prompt player responses. Always end it with some variation of, and what do you do?
Okay.
Because then the players will respond to that, and you can do far more off of their response than you can do than just thumbing through your notes.
Right.
I also sometimes teach classes on a little bit of voice acting and a little bit of voice acting as a GMing technique for how to do this sort of thing.
Oh, cool. What do you think? People need to start playing Traveller? What's the quintessential starter kit?
For characters or people?
Oh, well, for people, for new players coming to the game. Like, what books would you suggest that they get their hands on? Minimum set.
Mongoose Traveller Quick Start Guide. It's free, and it will get you to everything, and it will get you through the basics of character creation with not all of the options. You'll get to do the roll your character's backstory out, and have a hook. I know lots of people after I played Traveller for whom the best part about Traveller was the I possibly died in character creation bit.
Right.
Because that is a great solo game. That is a great solo game to let you imagine the stories of your characters as you're coming through.
Right. And what about you, Mike?
Traveller is famous for having a lot of solo modes for engaging with it, rolling up subsectors, designing ships, mechanically working through the trade subsystem. But for starting place, we're currently recommending Mongoose for new people, and that starter kit is a really good way to lay it on. I like passing on something. If there was a current library data supplement, I would recommend that.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things back in the Little Black Book days, back in the 80s, they did was two 5x8 supplements full of basically your glossary and tidbits of background history for the setting. And some of those were cool enough. You go, hey, let's check that out.
Get some adventure ideas from there.
Which gives the players adventure ideas, stuff that they would be interested in going to check out. It's none of it was GM secrets, none of it was spoilers. This was what a person in the Third Imperium would know or could look up.
Would commonly know, yeah, right.
And players can flip through that and go, this looks interesting. That's only 3 jumps away. Let's go. I think there's a lot of power to a quick start guide with that much hook that it can give the players initiative. Not just agency to go. Well, we want to go well, we heard about this princess needs to be rescued before blah, blah, blah. No, it's, well, hunting sounds cool. And there's a really cool critter over on this planet that's not far away. Let's go.
Right.
And get it. The highest form of Traveller GMing would be getting your players to say, let's go on their own.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's actually one of the reasons why I like the scholar as a career. You have so many excuses to say, well, that looks interesting. Let's go there.
Yeah.
Let's study that. Right.
It reminded me to show you. Ken, my archaeologist playbook, ripped straight out of Indiana Jones.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. What would you probably one of the last questions about Traveller would be what 3 items would you recommend be in the backpack of every adventurer? We'll start with Ken.
You need a good folding knife. You probably need a concealable pistol and a couple of extra clips, which I will count as a couple of extra mags, which I will count as one item. And then the other thing that you need is whatever set of documents that you need to get through the port authority, including, oh, hey, you dropped this C note here. I don't want to steal from you, but look, it's on the ground here. This is yours, obviously. It didn't fall out of my stuff.
To the customs inspector?
Exactly.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that he doesn't gig you for walking through the customs gate with a concealed pistol with a couple of extra magazines.
Right. Okay. So a knife, a gun, some bullets or some ammo, and your traveling papers,
including the folding kind with interesting pictures of the emperor on them.
Here's my passport right here, a whole stack of passports. Yep, those are my passports, all right.
The problem of being the problem with playing the scion of local nobility is not tipping people with money that has pictures of your grandpa on it.
All right, and Mike, what's your 3 traveling essentials in your backpack?
I was going to go knife, snub pistol with a variety of ammo types, and I was going to say boring stuff like pocket computer or multi-function toolkit. But I think Ken stole the hydrogen out of my jump drive on that one.
We've got a couple of people recommend a knife. A couple of people recommend pistols. Nobody has recommended a knife and a pistol, so you guys are unique. And
well, ideally, you want the violence to be happening over there,
right.
And that's where the pistol comes in.
Right.
And
I was gonna say, especially after just saying like how dangerous fighting is, and then you're like, so what do you need? Guns.
Well, yeah, that makes you dangerous.
And the reason why you have the knife is that a knife is a very useful tool.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many things that you can do with a knife if you're not observed.
Somebody also mentioned a multi-tool.
Yeah.
Or if you get dropped to the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a knife, you're better off than if you have clothes.
Mm-hmm. And if you're hanging around one of the, how shall we put this, slightly less reputable parts of the high port, having a knife allows you to do things like lightly score the gaskets on the hose mounts for somebody's vac suit.
Sever their hose. Sever their breathing hose. Yeah. Whoops.
No. You score it so that when they're doing exertions out there, it bursts while they're out there, while they're far away from the airlock and nobody can rescue them.
Right. Good point.
And then you also, and if you're really clever about it, you also take a couple of corrosive materials and just make it look like they didn't do a good job of maintaining their kit.
Whoops. Well, there's maintenance for you.
Mm-hmm.
The value of maintenance. So
and now you know why I play Scholars.
so let's talk about Ad Astra Games. How long have you how long you've been working there? Or are you the owner? What's your title?
So I am the president, owner, and chief bottle washer at Ad Astra Games. When I
Okay.
refer to we here at Ad Astra Games, it's usually me and the cat.
Gotcha.
Mike works for me on a freelance basis and has been gracious enough with his expertise and time to be my Traveller line editor and line developer. Ad Astra Games formally got its start in 2004, publishing Attack Vector Tactical. One of the things with Attack Vector Tactical is like the fourth or fifth copy we ever shipped was shipped to a fellow by the name of Ty Frank in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
What?
Yep. This was when he was George R. R. Martin's personal assistant.
George R. R. Martin is a local, and he does a lot of really good stuff around here.
Yeah. And Ty Frank used to be local, and now his wife has a very nice paying job, and he lives in Seattle and commutes up to Vancouver to be one of the writers in the writers' room for The Expanse.
Nice.
So I worked at Astra part-time from 2004 to roughly 2000, from 2004 to roughly 2006. I did a stint at Steve Jackson Games. I did another stint at Amarillo Design Bureau, the publishers of Starfleet Battles. Helped them do the launch of Federation Commander. I have some uncredited design work in FedCom. I was mostly their marketing director. After Fed Commander launched, we got the license to do the Honor Harrington space combat game, Saganami Island Tactical Simulator, and my then business partners and I made the decision to try and do this full time. It worked in some ways, it didn't work in others. And in 2013, I made a decision to go into some software development work for supporting my games. And this caused some friction with the movie company that then had the license for Honor Harrington stuff. And I was told, well, you can either have Honor Harrington or you can have that software. And I said, well, I'll leave you. How about I buy my way out of the joint company, keep the software, you guys keep the Honor Harrington license, I keep the Traveller license. And that was an amicable separation. And I have been working full-time for Ad Astra since 2014.
Oh, fantastic. And how did you first come to work for Ad Astra, Mike?
I think sometime after the fateful Attack Vector demo in San Francisco, Ken approached me about being the world manager for one of the more fucked up planets in that setting, which I did poorly at. And you gave that to one of the GDW guys, so at least I was replaced by the best. And then somehow I stepped into not Dead Man's Shoes on Squadron Strike Traveller, but through a series of misfortunes, alarms, and excursions. Two people ended up working with it on it. I was the last man standing who was qualified to do it, and did.
So yeah. The first person who was working on Squadron Strike Traveller was Steve Osmanski, and then and Steve did a lot of work, and then had a stroke.
Oh no.
The next person to work on Squadron Strike Traveller was Lauren Wiseman, who was just getting up to speed and then had his first heart attack.
Oh no.
And once he had his heart attack and his medications on that, Lauren more or less stopped being able to write because he couldn't keep focus long enough to fill a page. After Lauren had his heart attack, it went to Don McKinney, who had a heart attack, a quadruple bypass.
Wait a minute, this is like the cursed game.
Oh, it's better than this.
No, don't ask me to work on it.
But wait, there's more. But to quote Billy Mays, but wait, there's more. So Don McKinney did a whole lot of work on that, introduced me to a bunch of other people who worked closely with Mark. And then none of them really had the time or the bandwidth to take over for Don as he was recovering from his quadruple bypass. So then I handed it off to one of the people who helped me with Attack Vector by the name of Mark Graves. Mark Graves got all of my Traveller materials that I'd gotten from Mark Miller, packed them on up, and got called up by the National Guard to go to Kandahar and did a tour in Afghanistan. And as he was going through as he was on a convoy from Bagram Air Base to Kandahar, the Taliban attacked. And the Taliban managed to destroy 2 of the trucks that were going through there. Mark managed to make it to Kandahar, but Mark managed to make it to Kandahar literally with the clothes on his back and his cell phone. Every item that he had packed as luggage was in one of the trucks that got destroyed, including the laptop with all the work that he had done on Squadron Strike Traveller, including all of his Traveller materials so he could recreate them while he was in Kandahar. Mark told me about this, and this put the game kind of on hiatus for about 2 years. Because I was figuring 4 tries, 3 medical emergencies, and a Taliban attack. I'm not going to be superstitious, but you know what? I'm going to be superstitious. Mark got back from his tour, back to Mississippi, where he was clearing out his apartment in Biloxi after a hurricane had hit, and was also clearing out his storage locker. And his storage unit, after he finished off the storage unit, he found this carton that was labeled as "Take with me," that was labeled as "Ship to Afghanistan" from before his deployment. Pulled out the carton. Oh, look, there's 2 external hard drives here. I wonder if they still work. Which, with Mark, is kind of a really dicey question. There needs to be a Traveller ability for my proximity messes up electronic devices, because Mark definitely has it at least level 2.
Mm-hmm. My wife has that. She calls it her magnetism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mark plugged in the external hard drive, roamed around, and oh, look, hey, there's the entire backup directory that I thought was destroyed in Afghanistan.
Yay.
He sent it on to me and said, I don't have the bandwidth and time. And this is when I explained this to Mike Llaneza, and Mike said, let me check my life insurance policy first.
Yes. Can I go have a heart evaluation and get back to you? I have to go run on a treadmill and see if I can take this job.
And I need to track down all the people that I might have offended who have Japanese names, just in case some of them are ninjas.
So
and 2 witches.
And 2 witches?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
You gotta be sure.
So
well, 1 to be sure, and 1 for insurance.
Gotcha.
And the insurance seems to have paid off, because, well, I'm now working on Squadron Strike Traveller Fleet Book 2.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. And you seem to have broken the spell. You broke the curse.
I powered through a couple of segments that were, well, at least one of which was as bad as, well, the hurricane, if not the Taliban attack.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ken, have you ever insulted an ugly crone at a foreign open air market? I mean,
to the best of my knowledge and belief, no.
Just wondering. So, Mike, what all publications have you been involved with at Astra?
Well, just the Traveller stuff so far.
Okay, and you're working on a book 2?
Working on a book 2, and my previous writing credits were the vehicle section of Chromebook 1 for Cyberpunk 2020.
Cool.
You've also got a writing credit in the 10 Worlds setting Bible, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Yeah, I may have failed, but not without some product.
Mm-hmm. So my experience with managing freelancers is that if they actually turn something in, they haven't failed. They may have turned in something that I need to extensively rewrite, but the only way to fail as a freelancer is failing to turn something in at all.
That's
I recognize that freelancers in the game industry, they are doing it as their hobby. Their hobby, when their hobby becomes stressful, it stops being fun. When it stops being fun, they stop working on it.
Yep.
They are not doing this. They are not making a living off of this. I cannot treat them as employees. I have to treat them as very valuable contributors and watch them carefully for burnout.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite type of content to produce, Mike? Do like maps, modules, rules, fiction? What's it? If you could have a job doing your favorite aspect of this job, what would it be?
Thrown my way. I've gotten deep satisfaction out of writing playbooks for my hack, designing starships for Squadron Strike. Having climbed that learning curve, the view is fucking awesome from up here. You may want to beep that later. But the view is incredible from up here, and some of the interstitial fiction I've written has been really satisfying. Writing short pieces to grab attention and focus the reader on one element quickly is an interesting challenge, and I've got some pieces in my clubbing file out of Squadron Strike Traveller 1 that I'm really proud of.
And you should be.
And what about you, Ken? If you could spend all your time doing a couple of aspects of this job that you really like, what would they be?
Well, really the thing that I love about working for myself is that I only work half days and I get to decide which 14 hours count. I do rules writing, rules editing, page layout, art buying. I write scenarios. I write fiction. I run playtest sessions. I tweak the rules for ship designs and in Squadron Strike. I really wish I had more time to devote to Attack Vector because I really love the world we built for that. But
it's like the tinker and dabble in a lot of different things.
Yes, my daily to-do list usually has about 10 to 12 items. Most productivity managers suggest that your daily to-do list should never have more than 5 to 7.
So you like to optimize your time, as we learned.
Ken's achieving at a very high level, but he's making games for a living. He's his own boss, and everybody should envy somebody who has struck their own path and made a living at it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So tell us more about your Traveller product line, and what can we find Traveller style over at Ad Astra Games?
So what you can find Traveller style over at Ad Astra Games is Squadron Strike Traveller, which is
either
a box set.
Tell us a little bit about that. What is that?
Well, it's either a box set, which is an alternate entry point to the Squadron Strike game engine, or it's a folio product if you've already got Squadron Strike as the box set.
Okay.
What it does is it allows you to do large ship naval combat in the Traveller universe. The smallest thing we have is 1,000 D-tons, and if you're flying one of those, the thing that is crossing your mind very, very quickly is, I'm really glad that I'm flying around things that are more dangerous than me, because the only chance I have of surviving is not being a high enough priority to actually be worth targeting. All the way on up to a Plankwell battleship and the Veep Jackal battleship on the Jordani side. You get to fly ships in 3D with Traveller weapons that actually feel like Traveller weapons. I'm really pleased with what we did with the Meson guns, and I'm really pleased with what we did with the particle beams and the energy beams as well.
The Sandcaster hack was inspired.
Yeah, in part because there are so many different ways of doing Sandcasters in the various incarnations of Traveller space combat that what's one more way of doing them? What we ended up doing with the Sandcaster hack for this is that canonically what a Sandcaster should be is sand that you throw out towards the direction or on the bearing of somebody who's going to be shooting at you, and it will act as effectively
dispersal.
ECM. It'll act as ECM or dispersal for laser weapons coming in. One of the quirks of one of the early Traveller combat systems is that to streamline play, they made it so that you threw out the sand after you knew that the laser had hit you.
I see.
And that makes my physics heart cry.
I see.
So what we ended up hacking sand into for Squadron Strike Traveller, because first of all, interposing barriers in three-dimensional vector space is not a very effective tactic. And not only is it not very effective, it is a tactic that will cause people's brains to hurt as they try to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did instead was, sand is basically a piezoelectric material that you throw on out and you hold in place with with magnetic fields.
Okay.
And it works like shield bubbles in Starfleet. It works like shields in Starfleet battles,
Okay.
except for the fact that you put it out there and it goes away at the end of the combat phase. So one of the decisions you have to make in Traveller is, one, what direction or directions am I being shot at? Am I being shot from? Two, how much sand from that aspect, from the ammunition banks of the sand on that side, am I willing to spend at this particular point in time to defend against this possible shot? So there's a little bit of a Vizzini and Princess Bride thing. Well, I know that you know that I know that.
Does it mechanics wise? Does it act as shield reinforcement or?
It acts like shields that go away at the end of the turn.
Okay.
But however much ammunition, you have a maximum amount that you can put out based on the field strength and a certain amount of ammunition.
Gotcha.
So how much ammunition are you willing to burn up to your maximum is sort of an important decision. And then we have Meson guns, which just skip it entirely.
Right. All right. And what else? What else you got on your Traveller product line?
So I also have a line of Traveller spaceship miniatures.
Oh, hold on a second. Go on, Mike. Did you have something to say about Traveller Squadron Strike?
I was foolishly about to prompt Ken about the miniatures.
Oh, okay.
but I forgot that one of the hats he wears at Ad Astra that he didn't mention was PR.
Yep. I wear all the hats. It's an entire planet full of hats. But I have two lines of Traveller miniatures. One of them is RPG scale stuff, which are actually the old Ralpartha mega miniatures models. I've got the Beowulf, the Suleiman, the Pinnaces, and as part of the Squadron Strike Traveller Kickstarter, we also put out the Gazelle and its launch.
These are all pewter miniatures?
These are all pewter miniatures.
Cool.
And they're all at the 1/600 scale, except for the Pinnaces, which are at 1/900. And I have a more extensive series of Traveller warship miniatures that are at 1/7200 scale, more or less. We had to buff up. We had to break the scale a little bit for the 1000 D-ton ships. Otherwise, we'd be using tweezers to move little flakes of pewter around. And I have those for the Imperials, the Jordani, and the Aslan. And when we're closer to launching Shipbook 2, we're going to be adding more Imperials, more Aslan. What other ships are we putting in Shipbook 2, Mike?
Shipbook 2 is planned to cover the Imperium Soleimani War of 990, where the Soleimani made one of those classic decisions in strategy: do we strike now or later? And later we're going to lose, so let's go now. The Soleimani attacked into the Imperium's tech level 14 fleets on that border, but didn't finish the job before the tech level 15 new construction showed up. And reminiscent of a couple of different factors that happened in World War II. So we've got 6 ships for the Soleimani, 6 ships at the old tech level for the Imperials. We'll also and they're scaled so that when the reinforcements show up, the tech level 15 ships from the original fleet book will fit in, and then the Soleimani start having a bad time. And we're also including 3 more Aslan ships, probably a capital ship, light cruiser scale, and another destroyer. Balance those out. The exact mix for Soleimani and Aslan hasn't been settled on. We got a variety of designs in playtest.
Mm-hmm.
The basic structure is you're going to wind up with an extensive set of Imperial ships. This will also prep us for doing the 4th Frontier War, going back in time from the original product, which was the 5th, because we'll just have to do the older Zidane ships.
And when we do that one, perhaps we can also get some of the Vargar in there.
some of the Vargar, maybe some Sword World's fleet units.
Yeah,
Always.
and basically when I launch this product, I also want to basically run a Kickstarter to go with it to get pewter miniatures for all of the ships that will be coming out in the product.
Oh, cool. Have you done Kickstarters before? Will this be your first one?
This will be my third or fourth Kickstarter, actually.
Oh, great.
Squadron, the Avid Assistant got a Kickstarter. The original Squadron Strike Traveller got a Kickstarter. And then now that cash flow has gotten enough better that I can actually produce things like folio supplements, like Shipbook 2, without having to go and run a Kickstarter to make it possible. It makes it easier if I have it, but more or less what I'm planning on doing with this at some point is running a Kickstarter for either Shipbook 2 plus the miniatures, or publish Shipbook 2. Or say, hi, we're going to be publishing Shipbook 2 no matter what in a month, but we're running a Kickstarter now so we can get the miniatures going for it. Because Traveller players love their miniatures.
Yes. I like to just have like an icon of that represents something to me in the game. I picked up this really cool. I don't know what kind of rock it is, but it looks like it's black with multicolored sparkles in it, and it looks like if you look at it, you're like looking into space. It's really cool. So I keep that for like my little Traveller token. I would like a ship or for that, or for D&D, I have a little ranger that I keep here on my desk. Just little things to remind me, little tokens of to remind me of all the games I play. I think it's cool. Tell us about your most recent product. Do you have anything that just came out?
So the most recent thing that I've put out has been Air Battle Rag 5 for the Birds of Prey line.
Okay. Tell us about
Squadron Strike ship. So Birds of Prey is basically a jet combat simulator.
Okay.
One of my little pitches for how I do for the products that I sell is that I make flight simulators for people with slow eyesight and bad reflexes. Attack Vector is a flight simulator using rockets with hard enough science that it was probably an influence on The Expanse, and is certainly harder science than anything you see in Traveller. Squadron Strike is a flight simulator for people who want to build their own spaceships from any universe, any setting in full 3D. And Birds of Prey is an actual honest-to-God flight simulator for air combat in the jet age, and it more or less covers everything from the Korean War to the F-35C. And there are two lines of supplements for Birds of Prey. One of the supplement lines is the mainline supplements, which cover specific air combat themes. The other one that we run into is, hold on a moment, Mike is pinging me because he's had an internet connection.
Oh, and he can't get back in.
Yes, and he can't get back in. Ah, there he is.
Here he is. For some reason, Discord did not go bleep bleep bloop when he left the channel.
Yeah, that was network based. I've most of this conversation has been overlapping with my workday. I'm cleaning up in anticipation of dropping that and close my VPN connection and I went Discord.
Whoops.
Glad to have you back.
Yep.
Because I was just about to ask you the next question.
Well, let me finish this. Let me finish my answer here. Birds of Prey has two lines of supplements. One of them are basically theme supplements about specific types of air combat conflicts. And the other one is the Birds of Prey crowd holds an annual convention every year. And they basically turn all of the convention prep for the convention that just ended into another supplement each year. And we just got Air Battle Rag 5, which covers the most recent Birds of Prey convention. At this particular point in time, Birds of Prey probably has more aircraft data cards on modern fighting jets than have been published in any previous air combat game.
Where can people find your titles?
AdAstraGames.com.
I was going to ask you, Mike, where you stepped away. What's your what thing are you most? I'm giving you a chance to humble brag. What's the favorite aspect of the Traveller supplements that you've made for Squadron Strike?
It's being entrusted with developing material I was already interested in. Fifth Frontier War was a big part of the Little Black Book experience.
Mm-hmm.
I followed Journal of Traveller's Aid Society, one of the outstanding gaming magazines in all of history.
Yes, great.
And all of a sudden, one episode came out, and they said, "Holy shit! The Zodani came over the border. We're at war." And I'm fleshing out a corner of that conflict and giving people the tools to play important battles from all over. Pardon me, from all over that conflict.
And one of the things that I like about what you've been doing with this, and one of the things that I've been doing with it, is writing in the fiction that helps portray that conflict on a human scale or an Aslan scale, as the case may be.
Sounds interesting.
It's
Go on.
Fiction bits about an imperial officer suffering from massive PTSD, getting back on the horse and going out into the black, or an imperial defector preparing for a fighter launch, or a married pair of ambitious Aslan carving out their space in the stars. And fiction, I've really enjoyed developing that. And giving different perspectives on what could really have been going on in that universe. And I've read enough. I feel almost an obligation to give back. Let other people read the stuff that I've added to the canon.
In the tutorial booklet in Squadron Strike Traveller, in addition to it teaching you the game in stages, little bits here, little bits there, you run through 4 scenarios, and each scenario adds a few more rules to the game. In the tutorial booklet, every one of those scenarios that you're learning through starts out with a chunk of fiction, and it follows the trials and travails of an imperial destroyer officer who gets one ship shot out from underneath him and suffers a little bit of PTSD, but also gets some briefings on, you cannot allow this particular officer, who is also a noble, to do the things that we're expecting her to be doing. And so he has some interesting conflicts that imperil his career, as well as, imperiling his life.
Right.
And it also discusses things like traffic analysis to figure out where the Zerdani are raiding from based on the time hacks for when they arrive at particular systems and what directions they come from.
I see. Huh. So, do you have any advice for new players at Squadron Strike?
Come join us on Analog Space Combat by Internet, which is our Discord server and also the name of our website, because we run teaching games very regularly.
We'll put links to that in the video description so people can find that.
Yep.
Please do.
We love having lots of people show up and playing games, and there is no obligation to purchase before you learn to play. We treat this as doing a game store demo or a convention demo. Our job is to make sure that you have enough fun that you're going, yeah, I'm going to figure out how I'm going to explain this charge to the wife.
I had the opportunity to sit in on a game, and it was really interesting. I enjoyed it, and it looks like tons of fun. So hope more people will come to it. Come check out the training games. You don't necessarily have to play. You can just lurk like I did, and see how cool it is before you jump in. If you're a Starfleet Battles person or any kind of thing like that, you will definitely like this game.
And we'll probably be running a couple of games of this, a couple of teaching games of this at your Mayday event as well.
Fantastic. Oh yeah, that's I was going to ask about that. Give us a little description about what you plan to do on Mayday, because this will be simulcast probably while you're doing it.
All right. We have a couple of teaching scenarios for Squadron Strike Traveller. One of them basically gives everybody a Zodiac Heavy Destroyer or PF Sloan Imperial Destroyer. And you get to go and fly ships of the same size that are very, very fragile compared to the amount of firepower that they have. In a vector environment where one mistake won't quite kill you, but boy, you will notice you have made a mistake.
Yeah, because you're flying off the map.
Or, you're flying with half of a ship off of the map. We've also got an Aslan DDL that makes a nice partner for those other two ships. And the usual teaching scenario that I have is I will set people up as you are defending this planet, you're attacking this planet. Here's the objective, and don't worry too much about the planet. The virtual map and the smartphone app will take care of it for you. Your job is to figure out how the hell do I manage my vectors without flying off the map and without going screaming into the particle beam shot that yeah, this is going to be bad, isn't it? That's a Bay energy beam that can fire twice as often as I can. It's got half again. It's only got 2/3 of the range, but it fires every turn. And my big particle beam, which can really mangle that ship, fires every other turn. So I've got to play this clever.
Right. Yeah, it was really cool versus tabletop because you have this 3D environment that you're moving your ship representations in, so you can see where all the ships are, their attitude, their position, what angle they're at. It's really cool. It's a really great game. So, what are your plans for this next year, Mike? You got any? If COVID went away tomorrow, what's your first gaming plans?
I don't know. Also miniatures down to the local game store. Maybe put up a notice in the mailroom in the building about getting a game night going.
That'd be cool. Do you have any new productions in line aside from this book 2? I don't think we're
going to get into a book 3 this year, but could happen. There's definitely stuff that we're leaving on the table that we want to get in. It's for the Traveller players will notice that the Battle Riders have not yet made an appearance, and they've been strategically significant in multiple wars in Traveller canon. There's a strategic option that lives in the back of my head that might make it to the front of my head.
Okay.
And my Traveller hack, I know what my next steps are. I just have to arrange to actually implement them.
All right. And Ken, what are your plans?
Well,
got any new productions in the works, or eager to get back to gaming?
I've got several products in various stages of completion, and some of them are, the stage of completion is I know which cupboard they're in so that I can put them on the counter that will eventually lead to the back burner. But for Traveller-related stuff, we have sketched out outlines for Shipbook 2, Shipbook 3, and I believe Shipbook 4. I have opinions about spaceship combat in RPGs. I tell the parable about the dolphins and the chariot. Spaceship combat in an RPG should really focus on interior shots of the spaceship, the cockpit shaking back and forth, with the player characters leaning back and forth, and worrying about the damage
falling from the ceiling.
Yeah, debris falling from the ceiling, sparks coming from the consoles.
Right.
The moment your space combat in an RPG shifts to an exterior shot of the ship, you stop focusing on the players. And most of the games that have tried to do space combat as an RPG try to end up implicitly or explicitly move it to the exterior shot. And then you run into the problem where the only player character who gets to make meaningful decisions is the one who's the pilot. He chooses which way, or she chooses which way the ship is pointing, which determines which weapons get to fire at which targets, and it's the bus driver problem. If you don't behave, I'm just going to turn this spaceship around and you guys can fight the Jordani next week. So what happens with spaceship combats in RPGs is that it's sort of like hitching dolphins to the front of your chariot. If the dolphins are happy, the people in the chariot are drowning. If the people in the chariot are happy, the dolphins are flopping around on the dirt of the hippodrome. Usually what happens with this is somebody tries to make a hybrid where you have the dolphins pulling the chariot, which means putting the dolphins in a wheelchair or dressing up horses to look like dolphins. The Star Trek RPG from FASA from the 1980s was one of the high watermarks for this, because it really did a wonderful job in an RPG of using practical special effects to make those horses look like dolphins. And the Foley editors really did a brilliant job of editing out all the sound of the hoofbeats on the track and replacing with the sound of seagulls and waves. So I have a couple of different ways of tackling this as a problem. One of them is to basically insert Traveller skills as a shim into Squadron Strike, which is sort of the traditional way of doing it. But because of quirks in the way that Squadron Strike damage allocation works, it might actually be tolerable or acceptable. It might not be. I'm still looking to test that. The other one is a more abstract game that basically places that focuses on where the players are on the ship and what the consequences are when that particular part of the ship gets damaged and what they're going to do when it gets damaged, with the movement more or less working like the old Steve Jackson Games title Starfist, where the player ship is the center of the universe, and and how successful the pilot is on doing his piloting check allows him to shift enemy units in and around the ring of hexes around the spaceship, picking ranges and things like that. Rather than
changing
forcing
range and changing the bearing of where the enemy is with respect to your own ship.
exactly, which is sort of which is just adding a little bit of chrome onto the standard Traveller range band system.
Yes,
it's range band and bearing. But it still avoids the hassle of having to have everybody know how to play a vector move at space combat game.
It sounds like a good way of meshing.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm hoping to do, and I'm not sure if we'll find a GM for this, is I would like to have a GM run 2 sessions of the same adventure at your Mayday event. One of them using the abstract ship movement system that I just described. The other one shifting over to Squadron Strike with Traveller skill sets in it as sort of a shim, because these have gotten developed to the point where they need to actually be played. And my problem with Traveller GMs so far is that I will send these to the Traveller GMs and they will read them and they will say, "Wow, that's really cool." And I'll say, "Cool. Can you get it in front of your players and let me know what happens?"
Crickets
in a vacuum. You can't even hear them.
Yep.
Well, hopefully we'll get some we'll get the word out, and by the time people hear this, they will be witnessing a Traveller game with a real Ad Astra combat section.
And this is independent of doing the Squadron Strike Traveller teaching games, which I'm expecting to have no shortage of GMs for.
All right. I guess there'll be a schedule at some point that you'll forward to me.
There will be a schedule as soon as I have people lined up for the GMing.
Great.
Probably within a week.
Great. All right. So how can people contact you and get a hold of all your stuff? Do you have a social media page or?
The primary social media page for Ad Astra Games is Ad Astra Games Fans on Facebook.
Okay.
We have a Discord server. The company website is adastragames.com. And we play on a virtual map hosted at Analog Space Combat by Internet, or askme.net.
Cool.
Named that because at some point we're going to be doing things other than my own titles on this, because we've built the tool chain out. We might as well talk to other space combat game publishers and see what we can do to support them.
All right.
My attitude towards space combat games is, as long as they're all blowing up spaceships, everybody wins.
We're all happy. Do you have anything to add to that, Mike?
No, that's pretty much it. As long as we're blowing up spaceships and can't tell miniatures, we're all happy.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, guys, we've come to the end of our interview. I'm your host.
It's been fun.
Thanks, man. Thanks for joining me this year. We couldn't schedule you in time because I'm a real stickler for my schedule, and we didn't get in touch with you until the last minute, and it just would be too hard of an add-on. But I'm glad we got you on board this year, and hopefully you'll return again next year.
I look forward to it.
Fantastic. Well, folks, I'm your host, Frank Succardi, also known as CyborgPrime, and I've been talking with Ken Burnside and Michael Llaneza of Ad Astra Games. Tell us one more time where we can purchase your titles.
www.adastragames.com.
Fantastic. Ken, Mike, thank you so much for your participation in our Mayday Traveller Day event.
Thank you for having us.
It's been a real honor.
Thanks, guys.
I'm really looking forward to talking to the people on your Discord server and having them come and play.
Fantastic. I wish you both the best of luck. And thank you, dear listener, for joining us today. That's all for now, travelers. Until next time, happy traveling.